Jamie's well known for his flexibility.
Joe's got video proof.
You ain't supposed to mention that.
Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers from 3 countries, 2 continents, and featuring 5 guys separated only by the same language. Here's your host, Richard Morley.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good times, whatever time it is, wherever you're listening. I'm not talking quite as enthusiastic because I do appreciate that some people, Alan, might have a bit of a hangover at the moment. So welcome to our first 2017 episode. Joined with me tonight, as always, we have Mr. Chris Cutes.
What's up, everybody? How you doing?
And Mr. Joe Whitaker.
You're right, Tom, yeah.
Alan Robinson, the woodworking junkie.
How are you, fellas?
And dressed in nothing but a Santa hat and a smile, but now having woken up somewhat, it's Jamie Page.
How you doing?
For anyone that didn't see, just head on over to our Facebook page and that will end up being burned in your retinas, so I apologise in advance for that. Just very quickly, because obviously I didn't do the shout outs for last week's episode. We have thank yous for Pat Lapp, Robert Evans, Jim Dockrell, Sharp Edge Woodworking, Temple Boy Turnings, KSFWG, Bruce Chastain, apologies for butchering your name there, Badger Workshop, Wood Frontier, Shogun, Jimmy, Ian Hay, Bob Rawson, Ragtime, Matt Brander, Wacky Woodworks, Steve French, Dave Gatton, The Red Smith, and over on SoundCloud, it was Azaleas. So a big thank you to everyone. Don't forget, you can rate us on iTunes, comment on all our stuff. We love hearing your comments and interacting with you on our platforms, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and everywhere else. So thank you for that. What are we talking about tonight, guys?
Our origin story, Makers International, the origin story, which sounds like a really bad science fiction movie.
I was just going to say it sounds a bit
I was trying to give it some more dramatic flair than it possibly deserves, but I think that's what we're talking about.
I don't think we deserve any dramatization, do we? Probably not at this stage, certainly. So, yeah, I mean, that's if that's everyone's good to go, then I'm certainly happy to talk about where we came from, how we came to be, because we're actually, compared to a lot of other podcasts that certainly in the maker community, but in the wider podcast arena, we're quite large in terms of there's 5 of us. I think kind of 3 is sort of the average, is it not? So,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard a podcast where it had 5 people on it before. Anybody else? I mean, granted, my knowledge on podcasts is very limited because I only listen to a few. So if anybody else knows of others, please chime in.
I think anyone that listens to this podcast will know that our knowledge of podcasting is fairly limited, to be honest.
That's a good point.
Not to put it too bluntly, but there is actually a very, very good reason why there's 5 of us and not 3 or 4. 4, I think, if my history is correct. How do we want to kick this off? Do we just come out with it? I don't think we've talked about this before, have we? Where we?
No, so let Alan take the lead, because I mean, Alan knows the story pretty well. I mean, he was there.
Put down the vape, Alan. It's over to you.
I've always wanted a podcast since before I started YouTube. Even I've always been a big fan of podcasting, and I noticed Chris's voice long before I ever knew what he did for a living, and I immediately identified him as. I was like, wow, this guy would be great in radio. He'd be a great podcaster. Maybe this is the guy I should ask to podcast with. So I asked Chris, and we started a small podcast. We didn't put all that much work into it, and it kind of failed on us, to be honest. So we kind of let it sit on the shelf for, probably a good 6 months. And and then I decided one day, like, why didn't we ever go anywhere with this? I'm going to ask him again. And, I asked Chris. Chris suggested Jamie as a third. And I was all for that. I thought it'd be great comedic relief. And at some point, he sent me a message, and all it said was, I got something big for us. Meet me here at this time tomorrow. And I show up, and he has got Richard and Joe here in tow with him. I kind of consider Chris like the producer of this podcast. I mean, yeah, like he really took the helm on setting it up and coming up with the entire team, and you absolutely nailed it, buddy.
Well, thank you, man. And the backstory to that was this: that Alan and I had, and I know that that Joe and Richard have a separate story than the one that I'm going to tell. So I'll let you guys tell that.
Okay.
Alan and I had tried to work on getting a podcast, like Alan said, up and running. And then it didn't really go anywhere. I don't know that that there was the interest with everybody was there at the time, and so like Alan said, it sat on the shelf. And then I believe that we started talking again when I did the reboot of Channel Pass, Alan, because that's when I started talking to you again about, because I wanted to feature your channel on Channel Pass.
Yeah,
it was shortly after I had that discussion with you that we started talking about the podcast again, got Jamie involved, and then I had the bright idea of saying, you know what, we should probably get a fourth. Just because like you mentioned earlier, Richard, there weren't a lot of podcasts out there that had more than 3 people on them. I said, we should try to do something and be a little bit different. And I reached out and talked to Joe and asked Joe if he would be interested in joining us. And that's when, and I'll let Joe pick up the story from here, because Joe told me that he was working on something else at the time.
That's it. Just as I got that message from Chris, me and Richard had actually been working on a podcast of our own. We was trying to target the UK audience, and it was Richard that actually contacted me about it. So I'd got that alliance with Richard already formed. We'd already even recorded a practice episode, and now I've got Chris messaging saying, join this podcast, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I'm doing a podcast with Richard. And he's like, well, perfect, Richard is ideal for this podcast, get him involved as well. So that was a lot of back and forth between the two of us. But as far as the starting of the Richard and my podcast, that was really the brainchild of Richard. So do you want to pick up that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, I always thought, and not just for 2016, but going back into 2015 and possibly even earlier than that, I always felt that there was a niche within the niche of the maker community to be more European and UK based, because there are a lot of really good UK makers out there. I mean, I could think of loads, and there seemed to be nothing in the podcast arena in the UK, and that was me scratching my head thinking, I genuinely at the time thought, and as it turns out with the input of you four, to have been on the money on that one, essentially, because obviously we've got a very good loyal base of people within the UK, as it turns out, that listen to all 5 of us for whatever reason. And I just thought, there wasn't any one podcast in UK based. I thought it had a lot of potential. Who do I know? Who can I think of that might be up for potential failure if it doesn't work out? Obviously me, if you don't know, in for a penny, I guess. So I contacted Joe, and we actually, I think it was like 2 days after we recorded our practice episode, and Joe had spent ages editing it, and we looked back on it and thought, yeah, I think we're probably ready to maybe release this. Let's find out how you do that and what the next step is. And then Joe comes back and says, before we do another one or take this much further, Chris has asked me if I want to join their podcast. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Because the one thing I find is you come up with an idea or that you think is your own idea that no one's thought of, and then you find out actually, you haven't just invented the wheel. There are lots of them, which was fine. These things, go up and down all the time. And then I was genuinely thinking, well, this might be the end of this. And then you guys went, no, come along as well, and you can host it. I was like, okay, I wasn't really up for hosting it, but I think this got mileage. You guys are great. Let's see what happens with it. We haven't really lost anything from where we were yesterday.
That's kind of the same genesis that Alan and I came up with, because when it was just he and I talking about it, we were talking about how, there are a lot of podcasts out there, and we didn't want to just do what everybody else is doing, because that seems rather pointless, because there are so many good podcasts out there that are covering the situation. I said, what's our differential advantage? What can we do that's different than anybody else? And that's when I realized, Alan's Canadian, I'm American. Well, we got 2 countries here at work. Let's get a third. Let's grab Jamie. Then we got the UK. And then we said, you know what? Then I started thinking, you know what? The UK is really underrepresented. I think in the makers world, because like you mentioned, Richard, there are so many good makers in the UK. And I went, we ought to get a fourth. And that's when I thought Joe. And then when he said he was doing it with you, I went, oh my God, that'd be great. 3 Englishmen, a Canadian, and a United States dude. How can this possibly go right? Let's do it. I just thought it was going to be a lot of comedy and a lot of fun. And it's turned out that actually it's been a little bit of both.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think if I'd have sat down and somebody had said to me, right, find 5 guys or 4 other guys from around the world, put together a podcast which appeals to so many people, has got the knowledge, the drive, the kind of the comedy value, and is completely different to all the other podcasts out there. There's no way I could have come up with your 4 names, and I don't think anyone could have come up with our 5 names, if that makes sense. It's not a dig at all. Purely by accident, we seem to have stumbled on something which people, for whatever reason, actually like. And the reason I say, for some reason, people like it, I don't know about you guys, but I still kind of struggle with what are we doing? Because we're just sitting here chatting once a week and having a laugh, but people genuinely seem to be relating to that. And you've only got to look back on the episodes, the people that are constantly listening and interacting, not just by putting a comment on the SoundCloud episode or the YouTube episode, but they're posting their own pictures on their own pages. And, like Bob did the other week, where he was charging his battery, I think, if memory serves. And then Frank turned up in I'm going to butcher the name, I do apologise. Shumandal. It was in one of his videos, just completely kind of a throwaway thing and it was like, wow. And that's a genuine kind of, do you know what I mean? It genuinely is so nice.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that.
You know what I think it is, and I don't think it's anything more than that. I think that we and the other podcasts as well are really nothing more than an extension of the community. And it's an extension of the Facebook community that's out there. It's the extension of the YouTube community that's out there, and while you don't have time to be on YouTube watching what everybody's doing all the time, you can't be on Facebook all the time. It's not hard to remain part of the community and listen to podcasts and still have the kind of conversations you would normally typically have on those other mediums going on in the background. So it's not that I think that we're doing anything special. I just think that we're an extension of all the good stuff that's already happening out there, as well as everything else. When you put it all cumulatively together, there you go, I can say it. I think that it's just it makes another whole different world in this, this social media thing that we're playing. That actually I personally enjoy, because before we did this podcast, I was enjoying podcasts from makers.
Absolutely, it's almost like. Does anyone remember radio? Do you remember that thing that you
vaguely? Yeah, I do.
Watching a YouTube video or a Facebook video or reading a Facebook post or looking at an Instagram picture doesn't really lend itself well to a workshop environment. Do you know what I mean? Yet having the radio, I mean, we all listen to music, whether it's through headphones or the radio in our workshops. I mean, I certainly do. I expect loads of other people do. But to have a specifically kind of making, woodworking, building, whatever it is, show on in the background, it does lend itself. So it is genuinely that extension of the community, like you say. And actually, until you said that, Chris, I hadn't really thought of it like that. It's accessing another area that people can listen to. Mm-hmm. So that's genuinely cool. I mean, I'm quite interested in Alan's story as to why he thought podcasting would be a good kind of direction to take. Does that?
I have no really good reason for that. I've always just podcasts have been a big part of my life for probably about 8 years now. Smodcast.com, one of my favorite entertainers, Kevin Smith, he has, I want to say 8 or 10 podcasts. He puts one up every day of the week. I spend 8 hours a day exactly listening to podcasts at work. From the time I get there until the time I leave, it's a ritual for me when I wake up in the morning to download the day's podcasts and just bang them out all day, every day. I don't listen to much music, to be honest with you. I only listen to podcasts. So it became embedded in my head, and just the idea of it just became obsessive with me. One thing nobody knows about me at all is long before YouTube, about 2 or 3 years before it, I did have a very short-lived podcast called Shades of Green, which was a very crude R-rated comedy podcast. And it went nowhere fast because we couldn't figure out the technical parts behind it. But I had a small studio in the basement of my house at the time with me and a friend of mine. And, I've just been wanting to do it ever since.
Well, I'll tell you a quick secret, Richard, and it maybe not a lot of people are aware of this, but coming from radio, I can tell you that radio by nature, since its inception, there are different types of music formats. There's the top 40 format. There's a rock and roll format. There's an alternative format. There's different types of musical formats. Those music radio will always be around. It's just what happens to be popular at the time is very trendy and very faddish. You follow me?
Yeah.
News radio and or talk radio has always been a mainstay, and it does not fluctuate. There is an interest. If people have an interest, they become glued to it. And I look at this as more of like talk radio for the maker community. It's targeted to a specific audience, because obviously, somebody who's into opening toys, for a living is not going to listen to a maker podcast. So, it's just a targeted way for us to, get out there and keep other people company. Because I don't think anybody sitting here today is looking to become the next, superstar in podcasting. I think we're just here to have a good time for ourselves and possibly fill some time for other people. And, the good feeling we get knowing that we may have put a smile on somebody's face is just pretty much worth it.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys will sort of back me up on this, but when I first had the crazy idea of doing a podcast, I felt quite strongly actually about not being. I'm a woodworker, like we all are actually. But I was quite keen to not make it specifically about woodworking, but about the wider making. And we've definitely touched on this in previous episodes. Just because you aren't a woodworker does not exclude you from being a maker. And we kind of joke about the basket weaver in the Congo or whatever it was.
Right, exactly.
And that's why we had Nicola on. Yes, okay, Nicola was a carpenter, but she's not part of specifically the maker community online. She's not a YouTube creator. And I think we've touched on those things. And obviously the fact that we're from, 2 continents, 3 countries, that does make us international, rather than specifically within our own borders. So where might we kind of take this in the future? I've got a few ideas. I'm sure you guys have got ideas as well.
Right. I'd like to respond to, because we've had several questions from listeners who are not members of the UK, Canada, or the United States, and they're confused about how we title our podcast. We call ourselves Makers International.
Yeah.
And we should clear this up, because we chose that name very carefully, because we didn't want to call ourselves Makers Worldwide or Makers Global, because frankly, we don't have the boot on the ground's experience to talk to you about what it's like to be a maker in Russia. But we do have the experience to talk about what we can do in several different countries, Canada, the UK, and the United States. And the true definition of the word international is 2 or more countries doing the same thing together. And so that is why we chose Makers International. So I can tell you where we're not going to go. At least I don't think we're going to go anytime soon. So we're not going to tell you how you should be doing things in New Zealand, and we're not going to tell you how you should be doing things in Russia. We'll just tell you what we know about the areas that we live in. So I think if you expect more than that from us, you're going to be disappointed.
And the flip side of that, if you are in Russia, and I don't speak Russian, but hopefully Google can translate it. We have enough trouble understanding each other, so I'm presuming that a Russian will be able to understand us.
What'd you say?
I personally, and I'll say this, for me, not for the five of us, but for me, and hopefully you guys will agree, I am interested and curious as to how things work in your area and wherever that area is.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and that helps with the international thing. You know, it widens the group. Just because I am in the UK doesn't mean to say I don't watch. There's a lot. What is it? Croatia, Slovenia, somewhere in that neck of the woods. Anywhere where people don't talk, they watch. I'm still interested about how they do things, how they make things, what they get up to. That
absolutely,
curiosity for me.
Yeah.
So,
I was just saying that we're not going to be the ones that can talk intelligently about their situation.
But
that's all.
That being said, one thing I'm looking forward to for 2017 is having a lot of different guests from a lot of different corners of the world. Like New Zealand, for instance, I would love to have Wacky Woodworks on.
Oh yeah, Dale. Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, Frank Schumandl, he'd be somebody that'd be great to have on. If we could get somebody from Germany, maybe Laura Kampf or somebody who's in Germany, and get their perspective on how things work there, that'd be just wonderful. I think that's kind of what we wanted to do. We're going to keep I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we want to keep our boots on the ground and talk about what we know we can talk about intelligently, but we also want to reach out and find, because we all have a genuine interest in how other people's situations are. And so that's something I'm definitely looking forward to.
It'll be great to actually be able to learn about the different cultures as well, and how their situation regards to making compares to our own, because I kind of see our UK perspective as a stepping stone for the European audience, because from a UK perspective, obviously, there's a big difference between the US maker community, I feel, compared to the UK in regards to tools and material availability. But I would guess that the UK compared to Europe is a much closer match. So if somebody's watching American makers and American YouTubers and can't really relate, and then they get the stepping stone to a UK maker YouTuber, it's that much easier to bridge the gap between the different countries, the different continents and communities. But by having the guests on from the likes of New Zealand, Germany, and so on, we'll all increase our own knowledge and we'll be able to relate back as well, I presume. So going forward into 2017, things can only get better, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if somebody's out there listening and they want to be on the show, then get in touch. There's a million different ways. Well, slightly less than a million, but there are a lot of different ways to get in touch with us, through just us as individuals, through YouTube, through the videos, through our own videos. There's a myriad of possible channels of communication there. So ping something across to somebody somehow, and we will find it, and then we can. And
that goes down to the basket weaver in the Congo. If they happen to be listening, and they want to come on and tell us what they do and how they do it, we'd love to have you on.
Absolutely.
I'd find that fascinating, to be honest with you.
One thing to remember is, though, for me right now, as we're recording this, it is 5 to 10 on a Sunday night. So I'm assuming that for Joe and for Jamie, it's the same time. Alan and Chris, you're 5 hours behind us.
Yeah, it's basically 5 minutes to 5 right now in Sunday afternoon is when we record this.
So the point is, we are in different time zones. So you guys that are listening potentially are in different time zones. That's a complication which we may need to work, but we will need to work around. So, whether we record, a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later if we can, or whatever, just to kind of try and get a medium for time. I'm sure we could work something out. I'm certainly happy to be flexible, even if Jamie isn't.
Oh, I am. I'm always happy to be flexible.
Even if Jamie isn't.
I can put on my leotard and become a gymnast.
Jamie's well known for his flexibility.
Here we go. We've started now.
Joe's got video proof.
You ain't supposed to mention that.
And the gates suddenly open.
Yeah, now we get down to why we're really here. So we can all make fun of Jamie. It's a big group effort. No, but I think that's great, guys. But I don't want to sit here and talk about in-house business because people may not be interested in that. But where do you guys? Are there anything that you guys want to do? I mean, because there's a lot of things that we don't do that other podcasts do. And granted, we're still young and we're still growing. And I don't know. I mean, there's merchandising out there. Do you guys want to? That should we put out an opportunity for people to buy T-shirts, stickers? I mean, I don't know. Where do we go from here as far as either promoting ourselves or giving something back to the people that are spending time with us on a weekly basis? What do you guys think?
Personally, I would say that as we're starting out, it's ideally we'd just like to be able to cover costs, I would guess, because Alan, you're in charge of the accounts. I think we've got the premium SoundCloud account, haven't we? Can you remember just how much that was?
Yeah, we're looking at about, I believe it was 130 per year.
I mean, if we could get close to anything like that, I doubt it, obviously, starting out, but just by anything to help out with that. But I don't see this as a profitable venture by any means, any little help sort of thing.
Yeah, we're not interested in Patreon or anything like that, but if we can put a product into the listeners' hands in exchange for $1 or $2 commission by the end of the year, I'm sure we could easily just support ourselves. We're not looking to make any money by any means.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. I didn't get in this to make no money, so I'm here for fun, and that's it.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would feel bad asking for, well, not even asking, but even for making that sort of Patreon crowdfunding thing available. Personally,
well, that's just and you know what, and Richard, I just want to jump in real quick because I don't want people to misconstrue what we're saying here. We certainly do not look down on or shun the people that are using Patreon because it's a fantastic platform to support people that you really like, and we're not saying anything bad about that. We're just saying it's just not our cup of tea. That's all. That's not what we're doing.
Yeah, we're definitely not talking bad about Patreon because I've personally got it for my YouTube channel. But
sure,
as we've all been in agreement with this podcast, this is literally just us getting together to have a laugh, sharing it all with you. We want to grow the community even more than it already is, interact with everybody on a weekly basis. It's what we enjoy. And it just happens that it's like, oh, this does actually cost a little bit of money. Should we get some T-shirts going perhaps? And like Alan was saying, if we could, put a little dent in it at the end of the year, it all helps.
Absolutely. So maybe we could rephrase the topic potentially slightly a wee bit, in so much as, would people be interested in the sort of the merchandising things being available with a view to any small profit would take a ding? I mean, because we all basically split the costings for the hosting, didn't we, for the podcast?
Yeah. Another benefit of having 5.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Does anyone else want to be part of the podcast?
Exactly.
Yeah, we're taking...
Can we get another 130?
Can we get another 150 people in here, please?
Yeah, and that's fine. We went, yeah, we'll do that. That's cool. Because our hobbies cost us money. And I guess this is kind of a hobby-ish sort of enterprise, for want of a better expression. So would those merchandising options be attractive to people, to the listeners? If it was out there, would people want a T-shirt or one of the other things that are available?
That's a good question, and let's ask. I mean, so guys, if you would be willing to do that, or if there's something that you would like, let us know. And you know what, if somebody's got a real in, I know that we've been kind of internally we've been talking about possibly Vistaprint, but if there are other sources out there that you know of that makers use to have their merchandising done, that they can turn like a small, like if we sell you something for $10 and we charge you $10.25 and we keep a quarter. I mean, is there other services out there besides that? I know there's Spreadshirt, there's a couple of them, but maybe if you have suggestions, leave them in the comments and let us know what your personal experience is with those people. Because we'd like to do it if it's possible. We'd like to.
Yeah, and if it's not something that people are interested in, we're still going to be doing this podcast. This isn't we need this kind of thing. It's just anything that helps, really. But yeah, we're definitely going to be doing this regardless of T-shirt sales and stuff like that. That's not what it's about. We're really enjoying it. We're having a laugh. That's what it's about.
Oh, exactly. But it kills two birds with one stone, because if people like the podcast and they would like some merchandise and they would love to have a T-shirt, then it'd be nice to be able to provide that for them. And if in return, what it does, if when they wear that T-shirt, it helps advertise us. So it's a win-win situation, basically. We're not trying to become millionaires over this. That's not what this is all about at all.
I'm glad we're still doing the podcast. It's the only way I can get close to Richard.
Oh, everyone likes to be close to me. It's my understanding that there are merchandising sites available where you can offer this merchandise at no profit to whoever's offering it. We could still offer the item at zero profit to us. Person still gets something in their hand, and we still get the advertising-y kind of thing around it as well. So that's a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another option for people, way to look at these things. So
That's a good idea. I like that idea. So I could have 2 options for each item. So if somebody did want to help with the hosting, then they can do. But if they just want the t-shirt at cost price, it's there available.
It's like buying music on SoundCloud. You always have the option to download for free or donate $1 if you want to donate.
It might be an idea to set one up in each country as well, so you don't have to pay shipping fees.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's
If you can
fantastic.
do it.
well, like each one of our countries or every country in the world?
No, each of our countries.
That's going to be Jamie's job.
Jamie, you're in charge of that. You're in charge of that. I want you to look into Japan
I advertise on Facebook. That's it.
It's not easy being comedic relief.
I don't know. I think Jamie's got a natural talent for it.
I was going to
Yeah.
start buying Jamie some carrier pigeons.
I'm going to call one Speckled Jim.
But no, that's a great idea. I think that's exactly the way we should go. They should be offered for free. Well, not for free, but they should be offered at a $0 commission. And if you feel like you want to donate, then by all means, you can donate any amount you want for any item.
But you get the item. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the payoff, as it were, rather than thing. And that kind of goes back to the shout outs that we do every week, because we don't request anything from anyone that listens. This is free to listen to, and it's just another way that we can say thank you to people who do listen and then take the time to say, we enjoyed what you did, or
That's it.
you're an idiot.
I think that will always be the greatest form of support for us, just letting us know what we're doing. If you're enjoying it, getting involved, getting commenting, everything like that, that will always be the biggest form of support for us, and that's what we enjoy most, just interacting with everybody.
Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, we've had a bit of a slightly longer than a week's break here between when we recorded the last episode and when we're recording now, because obviously, holiday season, everyone deserves a break. What was really cool for me, I don't know if you guys will agree with this, but looking through the comments, as certainly I do, and I know others do as well, there were comments not just to the podcast, but there were comments specifically related to individuals of us within and I thought that was awesome, because I like reading the comments and the replies and all the rest of it, and it was nice to go in as me and specifically relate to an individual who had something to say. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, or presumably you replied to the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of limit what I look at as being, since, I have to do the video portion of this on YouTube. I kind of focus on what goes on the YouTube side of it. And I know Alan does the SoundCloud and the iTunes. And Richard, I know you look at all three because you kind of have to research the show on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
On YouTube, there's been a lot of comments that were directed specifically to Joe, or there was somebody who wanted to know something specifically from you, Richard, or Alan, or Jamie. And so, yeah, it is kind of, it's very cool to see that happen. And what it's even cooler is sometimes you'll see conversations go from an initial question about the podcast, and then two people will get to talking about the subject, and then the conversation will grow from there, and they'll be talking about something totally different, and they just kind of leave us behind. And then, I think that's just great when that happens.
I really enjoy seeing that, though, how the conversation gets started from something that we've created, because we said right at the very start with the first episode of this podcast that we wanted to create like a secondary kind of community within the greater Maker community itself, and I think that's really coming into its own now. Everybody's getting to know each other, listeners, and getting to know each other, making new friends on Facebook, on other social media. And like you say, when you see a conversation start regarding something that's been said on the podcast and then go off on a complete tangent onto something else and everybody's chiming in, I think that's what makes it all worthwhile. That's what I really enjoy reading.
Yeah, and that's why YouTube is a part of the social media. It's not just about going to watch your favourite shows. or listen to your favorite podcasts. It's about interacting and having these conversations and networking and all the rest of it. And I think there are a lot of people who forget that or don't necessarily get that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I let me expose my ignorance here for a second and just ask you guys, because I don't know. Are we the only podcast that actually is on YouTube, or are there others?
As far as MakerCast, I believe we are. I saw Making It podcast had a channel, but I couldn't tell if it was fake or real or.
No, that is real.
It is real. They had just started it.
I believe Makers Hustle's on the YouTube.
Are they really? Okay. See, I didn't know. I wasn't aware if anybody else had decided that the YouTube platform was good for podcasts or not yet.
Yeah, I noticed that the Making It guys who had a channel on YouTube, because that came in on my recommended list, because obviously I'd been going to the Makers International to answer, look at the comments and all the rest of it. So then threw that in. But I, like you, Alan, I was a bit unsure, but I was listening to, I think it was the post-Boston episode. I lose track because I listen to podcasts when I'm driving like an hour plus and have it in the van. And I think David said, by the time this episode airs, all 100 episodes will be up on YouTube. So they're definitely on.
Well, I would tell you what surprises me about that. What surprised me about that is how many people actually listen and interact with us on YouTube. Because I didn't expect YouTube to be a place where people would there would be a lot of people that would spend time, listening to a podcast. I knew some people would, because, a lot of people have nice sound systems hooked up to their computers, and it's just nicer to listen to things, via, their computer as opposed to their phone or whatever the case may be. But I didn't expect it to be for us to have as many, listeners as we do on YouTube. Did that surprise anybody else?
I originally pushed to be on YouTube because of a show called Hollywood Babylon. Hollywood Babylon is a podcast. I've been listening to it about 6 years or so. And one thing I noticed about them, though, is it's audio only, but I noticed they had way more followers on YouTube than they did on their own website and SoundCloud put together. So to me, that was just a 2+2 kind of thing. So if it's working for them, it's definitely worth trying. It's a quick and easy thing to do. So just why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was very much, it's no secret between the five of us, but, for the benefit of people that don't listen to the conversations that we have between each other, between shows, I was quite openly dubious as to whether it was even worth the effort, because to me, certainly at the beginning, a podcast is for listening to in the car or on the bus or via your fruit-based MP3 player, not a YouTube thing. But you're absolutely right, Alan. It seems to be exactly the same on YouTube, and I really do not know why that is, but it is, and that's cool. Plain and simple.
I think one of the biggest appeals about it is there's a much larger audience already on YouTube. I think it's a very simple website to navigate and to use, and I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar with it. But a big boost I can see from it is the likes of YouTube Red and some of the third-party apps as well for YouTube, because you can get apps that'll play videos with the screen off on your phone. So it's basically like a podcast app. You just get the sound coming through, and you don't have to worry about the video playing and taking your battery and stuff like that. So I think that has really helped, because I know I much prefer to listen to podcasts on YouTube. I listen to a couple of podcasts that aren't necessarily maker podcasts, and I always listen to those through YouTube. That's my go-to website. So.
And if I can, I agree with Joe, and Richard, if I can give a nod to where my thinking came from when it came to putting five of us on a podcast together, because a lot of people felt, still to this day, probably think that's a lot of people. And for a podcast, I suppose it is. But if I was going to take a tip of the cap to somebody who gave me the idea that this might actually work, I have to go back to the Maritime Maker Show. Because as you know, I was on the Maritime Maker Show for as a regular for quite some time. And I was always asking Matt and Jason, I said, why don't you guys strip the video from this show and turn it into a podcast? Because there were some excellent conversations that used to happen on that show.
Yeah.
I said, because I would be on the show, and then the next day you know, and obviously you guys remember the atmosphere of that show. It was rather, you know, let's say levity abounded on that show. And I was normally, you know, pretty happy, you know, camper by the time I got on there anyway. So the next day I would listen to the podcast, but I would do it in my shop when I was working, and I would listen to it as a podcast. And it was really good to listen to. And that's kind of where the genesis of where my thinking came from for us to do what we're doing.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Maritime Makers, I don't think I've ever sat there and watched an episode, but every single week they've ever been on, I've made sure to put it on in the shop while I'm working, because Saturday night was always working night for me in the shop. And to me, it was always a podcast, unless I was on it.
Then what was it? Then what was it, Alan?
I'm not sure.
Train wreck. I'm just
weird
kidding.
little awkward Canadian, man.
Because you were on the Maritime as well, weren't you, Jamie?
Yeah, I was never a spotlight, but I was always on a panelist or something like that. So most of the time with audio issues.
Sorry, say that again.
Most of the time with audio issues. issues.
And he bit on that. He bit on it. Reel him in, Richard. You got him.
I did not think that would work. Sweet. But so, yeah, I mean, for me, that was a total, you know, sideswipe for me. I did not expect the uptake on YouTube that it seems to have had. And I guess also, I know this is a complete guess, if you're at your computer listening to the podcast via YouTube, I think it's a slightly easier platform to comment on than if, you know, you've got your fruit-based media player in your pocket, you can't make a comment or whatever. If, you know, if you're listening via an app, it's more difficult.
I don't know if it's just me on with my phone and SoundCloud, but I don't know how to actually comment on SoundCloud from my phone.
I don't actually think you can from like a phone, or I mean certainly from an iPod. But if you listen to it via
a computer,
then you've got a big keyboard in front of you, presumably.
So you might as well listen to it on YouTube, even if you are at a computer.
Yeah, I guess that's the case as well. That would certainly be. So we talked a little bit about having people on, did we not? And where we might want to take this. I think it's a great idea to have other people on, even though there's a lot of us. Well, yeah, 5 of us. I think 6 has worked very well. I mean, we've done it 3 times now. We've had Bill on. We had a group of 9 at when we did the Halloween show. There was 9 of us that did this podcast.
Yeah, in fancy dress. That
for me was a blur, because I just remember being in the van in the middle of the night in a service station car park, and it was a horrific.
It was perfect for Halloween, though, Richard. It was good.
Yeah, I guess looking back on it, it was like the last person in the house, and everyone's vanishing, and it was me in the van in this car park.
Was that you? I thought it was Andrew Aragon.
No, it was me. But so yeah, I think the numbers actually works really well. So what do you guys think about having more people on? You know, both you 4, but also people listening.
I think we should have somebody just absolutely exotic on in the very, very near future. We should all start looking for something nobody's seen before. Like you were saying, the basket weaver in the Congo, or a Russian woodworker who does things completely differently. I'd really love to hear from somebody just out of this world like that.
I'd wear a grass skirt if you want exotic.
Oh, God.
Seriously, do we need to install a stripper pole, or what are you talking about?
As soon as Alan said exotic, I had my fingers crossed, going, please hope Jamie didn't cotton onto that. Just watch. No, he's gripped. He's gone. But no, you're absolutely right, Alan. Yeah,
we'll have a stripper on soon.
Yeah, but the like we mentioned earlier, the challenge with that is obviously the time zone thing that we have going on, and it's going to be, you know, that's why it's so difficult. I mean, it's difficult for the 5 of us to get together on a weekly basis, but then to pull somebody from halfway around the world and try to get them on at the same time that we record this, let's say it just poses its challenges. It's not that it's impossible; it's just that it's challenging, but we're willing to make that effort if there's somebody that wants to come out. We'll see what we can do for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, if you're even halfway willing. I think us 5 are definitely willing. It might not, if it's more difficult, more challenging with the time zones, I think, don't expect it to happen within 2 days of emailing us. It might take a week, 2 weeks, couple of months. But on the whole, generally speaking, I think we're all open to that. And, as Alan's already said, just to get somebody out of the spotlight into the spotlight, exactly as we did with Nicola.
Exactly.
And nobody would have heard of Nicola unless they follow her on Twitter. And, look what's happened to Nicola in the last, she's been in, I don't know if you know this actually, she's had a couple of magazines. She's writing for a magazine regularly now as well. Not to do with us, but she is out there.
Yeah, she actually made the cover of a magazine. She's a cover girl. We had a cover girl on, guys.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, what's up? What's
up now?
I actually signed up for her newsletter, and the first newsletter I got was goodbye. Saying she's not doing it no more, saying she's writing for an article for a magazine. I was like, oh, first newsletter, and it's a goodbye.
So
she must have seen that I had signed up.
You scared her off, Jamie. She's like, ah. What are we thinking for show topics for where we might go? Has you guys got any ideas for?
I have no specific topics, but Chris, if you remember when I first pitched the idea of this MakerCast to you, I had said I want it to be a MakerCast based around the community, but I also would like it to be very, very personal and very, very real. I am hoping throughout this year we can, for one, each do spotlights on ourselves and just be very personal and get ourselves across that way. But
I agree, and I because Joe has already magnanimously done that, and I think it's I think that at some point in the future, I think each one of us needs to step up and swallow that pill as well, and let people know who we are as well, and be honest about that. Because I agree with you, Alan. When we started talking about it, I was like right on par with you. About let's keep it real, let's keep it real. Let's not pretend. Let's just be who we are, and let people get to know us. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then hey, no big deal, no loss. But yeah, I think that we each probably deserve it to the show to at least introduce ourselves and our own personal story to the audience.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's a month sorted straight away. There's 48 episodes left.
Well, let's not do it all in a row, because hell, that might bore me. We can spot each other in every now and then.
I didn't necessarily mean 4 episodes consecutively, but yeah, definitely. That's we've already talked about that. But I think when we did Joe's spotlight, so Joe could just sit back and go, yeah, whatever, guys.
That's it. I can put my feet up now.
I've been there. I've done that.
We're always looking for questions from the community as ever, because we really enjoy doing the questions from people. We have a right laugh recording those podcasts, so they're always great material to get our teeth into.
Yeah, those are fun to make.
Those are actually my favorite is if when listeners actually write in and have questions of us. It doesn't matter if they're silly. Like, I think that's where Jamie's whole boxes or briefs came from. One of our listeners wrote in and asked us that stupid question, and it's become an ongoing gag ever since.
That actually came from you asking Nicola on.
Oh, did it? Okay.
You're the inventor of that question.
Oh, sorry.
Need that on a t-shirt, boxes or briefs.
I should apologize now. But seriously, those are my personal favorite ones to do with you guys, is when we get the chance to sit back and answer other people's questions of us, because most of the time they're either hilarious or really good questions that we are too dumb to think of ourselves.
This is a crazy thought. This just popped into my head about what if people asked the question in a hangout. I'm not suggesting we get 50 people in the hangout, but could we not, rather than, as well as, should we say, somebody, commenting boxes or briefs, somebody actually sends a video or a bit of audio asking the question.
All right, that would sound interesting.
Does that?
I don't know how technically challenging that would be for us to. You know what? And, people aren't going to, maybe somebody out there knows how to do this, but because as we sit here today, if I had a piece of audio from, let's just say, I don't know, Joe from Peoria, Illinois, who has a question, how do we input that audio so that it records in the same track that we're currently recording on? If there's a way to do it, I'm sure there probably is. It's 2017. So, but I'm not familiar with how to go about doing that. That's all.
I could sort that out easily, but I definitely think that just an audio clip would be much better than trying to get somebody in the Hangout, because then we have the problem of the timings again. So if anybody's got questions that they'd like to just put into an MP3 or a WAV file or just any audio file, and you can get it to us, send us a link to a OneDrive or a Dropbox or whatever it is you use, and we'll enter that into the podcast and get your question answered on the podcast.
Let's just leave that open to the listeners and let them know that if they would like to submit an audio question, to please go ahead and do so. And you can do that. Where would you suggest that we have them direct those audio clips to?
Probably through the Facebook fan page. I would suggest if you could message the Facebook fan page with a link to download your audio track with a question on, that would probably be the best way to get it to us.
Awesome. Okay, great. Let's do that. Makers International on Facebook. There's actual fan page there. You go there, and if you have an audio clip of you having a question, give us a link to it.
I might just actually have come up with a reasonably good idea there. That was completely just like made up on the spot then, not pre. Well, yeah, I think that's cool. Magic. Okay, well, I think I've had fun tonight. That's been really good.
Well, have you not any other night then?
Well, not when you're dressed like that, no.
Oh, fair enough. I'll put my clothes back on.
we probably won't want people joining a hangout and watching us live if you're going to dress like that, dude.
Yeah, we don't want to see them the way you were dressed during our Christmas episode.
I'll put my clothes back on then.
Right. So what are you guys watching at the moment? Have you been like just drinking, binging over Christmas and New Year, or have you been watching other people's videos and stuff?
I really enjoy watching DIY Perks on YouTube. He's got a brilliant channel. He's from the UK as well, and he's very, very technically minded. He does a lot with electronics and mechanics and stuff like that. But what I enjoy about his videos is some people have the kind of videos that'll just skim over what they're doing and give you just the rough impression of the idea. He actually tells you absolutely everything what you need to do to make the project that he's done. He provides links to where you can buy the things, provides written instructions. Everything's just so well put together. A couple of my favourite projects of his has got to be a foldable, rollable LED light panel. And at first I was thinking, well, how useful is a roll-up LED light? But how he shows it being used, it's amazing. I've got to make one for myself. Like having it on a shelf and being able to weight it down, fold it into awkward positions to help with shadows and light casting and stuff like that. He does a lot of different unique projects like that I'm really interested. I'm sure everybody would enjoy it. So that's DIY Perks on YouTube. That's quite cool. I'm definitely going to go and find that, because just like you're saying, it's like, what's the use of a rollable light? And then you just explain it like, oh yeah, it's really good. When you see it used, it's brilliant. I love that sideways thinking. I think that's brilliant.
The guy I've been watching is an English guy who actually lives in Canada now. His name's Rob Summerlin. He's got a YouTube channel called Woodsley Summercraft. He puts out some absolutely brilliant content, and he did a collaboration with Steve Twidell at Temple Boy Turnings, which was an Elvis collaboration, which they both turned a Elvis themed project. It was done about 4 or 5 months ago now, but it was brilliant. And there's a hilarious blooper reel on his channel, which you've got to go and check out.
Awesome. And you know what? I'm going to check that out because I haven't seen that person, Jamie. So thank you for that. And just thinking of that, Steve Twidell might be somebody we might want to consider asking to come on the show at some point.
He is a funny and very, very funny guy, and he's
get the Irish perspective in here, eh?
He's from Sligo in Ireland. He's actually doing a live Facebook chat as we speak.
Yeah, I know. I have 2 shout outs if I could, and I'll try to rush. I'm not going to rush through them, but if you don't mind, I have 2 mentions that I want to make this week. The first one, as far as videos is concerned, I saw, and it was posted today, but by the time the podcast comes out, I guess you'd have to go back and look 3 days ago. Tim Sway made a very cool video that I watched earlier. He made a model boat, and this thing was, I would guess, was probably about 2.5 feet large. He made a model wooden boat out of reclaimed boat wood. So he had a friend that came by and gave him some from an antique ship that was being refitted, gave him some wood from the ship, and from the wood from that ship, he in turn made an antique boat, and it turned out really well. I don't know if you guys have seen that video or not, but if you have the opportunity to check it out, Tim Sway making a model boat out of reclaimed boat wood. It's kind of a cool twist, and like Tim, and like most things with Tim, I'm sure there's a backstory to this whole project that I'll look forward to hearing on the Reclaimed Audio podcast. But very cool video. It stands on its own as being something worth watching, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of, before you crack on, that's kind of Tim's way of thinking, isn't it? Uh-huh. He's another person whose head I'd love to crack open, because just the way his mind works is like, you're not related to, are you, Joe, to Tim?
Yeah, are you cousins or something? Because you guys both have that kind of mind.
Not that I know to.
Like with these stickers.
Yeah, exactly.
The stickers that don't stick. Sorry, I'm interrupting you there, Chris.
That's right. The other person I want to give a quick mention to, and I don't know that everybody is going to be familiar with what I'm talking about, because there isn't a video out on this, and I'm crossing my fingers that he did do a video on this, but I saw pictures of something this week that I just thought was totally freaking awesome. Trevor Carter. You're familiar with Trevor, fellow Canadian of Allens.
Yeah.
Trevor Carter made one of the coolest rocking horses I've ever seen. And it's not a horse. It's a rocking ATV, or four-wheeler for a kid. He made what looks like a wooden off-road vehicle and put it on a rocking horse base so a kid could sit on this ATV and rock back and forth. And it is extremely well done. I hope, Trevor, who has a YouTube channel, I hope you filmed that, Trevor, because that is an awesome project. I'm thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, those are brilliant. He also has, I believe, a motorcycle rocker he made probably a year or two ago. I remember him sharing it with me when I first met him, and it just blew me away.
Trevor's also an incredible scroll saw artist as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So Trevor Carter on YouTube, and just cross your fingers that he does a video on that project, because that was awesome.
So where did you see the picture? Sorry.
On in the Facebook group.
Oh, right. Okay.
He posted it there.
I'm going to go and find that.
What about you, Alan? Who are you watching?
Wood by Wright. I'm sure a lot of us all know Wood by Wright now. He is my go-to guy for hand tools. I've been spending the last week or so going through a lot of his older videos. And but most recently, he about 3 days ago, he put up a video on a detachable Moxon vise. It was just brilliant looking. He uses this curly oak that's just absolutely beautiful, and he has this way of explaining things so that somebody like me can really understand it. So if you're not watching Wood by Wright, get to watching.
Cool. I've seen a couple of the videos but not recently, though, I have to confess. You all know how rubbish I am at remembering to watch things, but I definitely subscribe. And when I say I'm subscribed to somebody, you can actually check, because all my subscriptions are public. So if you look through your subscribers, remember my channel should be on there. Just for anyone that is a naysayer.
Richard is doing a bit of CYA at the moment. Anyway, go ahead.
I'll be honest, because there's no point in trying to fib. I haven't watched a huge amount of videos over the holidays. Since I finished kind of making all the Christmas presents, I kind of close the workshop and take that time off to spend with the family and all the rest of it. So that's mainly what I've been doing. But one video that I did see pop up in my feed was from Justin over at Smarter Every Day. You guys heard of this? It's kind of a sciencey channel where he goes into, and it was a long time ago. He put out a video on a Prince Robert's drop. Have you heard of these? They're like these molten glass things when they're making glass things, and these blobs drop in the water and they freeze and they make these crazy like patterns. They look like tadpoles.
Right. Okay.
But they have these insane properties where they are just immensely strong, to the point that if you hit them with a hammer, they won't break. The glass is that strong, it won't break. It takes like a little shockwave from the tail of the tadpole to pass down this piece of glass, and it breaks, but it actually explodes, like properly explodes. And he filmed them like just insane 6-figure frames per second rates and slows it all down. And they're just amazing. And he also goes into the kind of the physics and the science of how it works. And you just have to watch these videos. They're absolutely awesome. So that's the Prince Robert's Drop videos from Justin, Smarter Every Day. I love it. I really love it. You have to watch it like 5 times. Cool.
Awesome. Isn't it Destin? Or
is it Destin? Is it? I'm rubbish with names. As anyone that knows me will tell you, Paul.
Is it Destin or Dustin or something like that?
Dustin, Justin. He's a super cool guy. He explains everything really well. And these videos are cool. They're really cool.
Yeah.
Seriously cool to watch. But, have you guys been working on anything? So say I kind of closed the workshop down over Christmas, New Year, and
I was away at my girlfriend's. It might surprise you. I was away at my girlfriend's family's for Christmas, and I've not been back in the workshop yet. But I'm hoping to get out there within the next couple of days and get some stuff done.
And honestly, Richard, after our last podcast, I didn't expect to put any more videos out, but it was really weird. I found, many moons ago, like 6 months ago.
Yes, I was going to have words with you about that. Yes, go on.
I will. Let me explain myself. I was working on a collaboration with a number of makers, and because we were doing a series on DIY tips and tricks and things of that nature, and it was going to go to another level. Yeah. And I had pre-recorded a number of tips that I had prepared to give these guys as my offerings to what the collaboration was going to be, and that never happened. And just I was sitting on my laurels like I fully intended to do. I had forgotten all about these. And I found them, and I went, you know what? I'd have just released these as quick tips and just throw them up on my channel just so that there's some activity and blah, blah. And that's where, because I haven't done anything. Those clips that I put out last week are like 6 months old that I put out, and I haven't been doing anything. And to be honest with you, I don't have any plans to do anything for this week. I'm seriously going to sit down, and I'm not going to go out in my shop for a week. I probably am just going to take that kind of a break.
Cool. Yeah, I was just going to jokingly pull your leg for 5 minutes because I had watched the videos first and foremost.
That's impressive.
But there were all these tips videos coming out of Chris's workshop like a week or two after we did a podcast on shop tips, none of which appeared in our podcast, I might
add. Probably because I forgot.
So that's how it is.
I see. Reserving the good stuff for yourself, are you? Fine. Be that way.
Yeah. Holding out on us there.
No, not at all.
What about you, Alan? Are you just going to be nursing the hangover for the next week, or?
Oh God, I'm hungover. I can't even believe I made it through the show. As far as in the shop, I did get a video out last week about making a chisel plane, which failed on me, but I saved the video with comedy like I usually do. And off video, I did a whole bunch of mods to my table saw. I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to know I finally made a zero clearance insert, and it came out absolutely perfect. I was really happy with that. So happy with it, I just kept going. The sticky measuring tape you put on your table saw, mine's always been off because I changed the fence to a quick release fence a while back. And right. So I built onto my fence. It was off by 3/4 of an inch. So I built onto my fence exactly 3/4 of an inch. So I have the new fence on there made out of white oak, which now lines up with the tape measure. So I guess you can say my table saw is now accurate and safe.
Safe's always a good thing. So
yeah, I don't know. You guys seen any of my videos? I always go out of my way to show it and see how many people say something. But every time a piece gets sucked into my table saw, I always put it in slow-mo and do a quick zoom in on it. And of course, a whole bunch of guys always have something to say about it. Sometimes angry and sometimes funny, but somebody always says something. But they're right. You should have zero clearance, and now we do.
Cool. Well, hopefully that will stop any more unsightly injuries to your person.
We've had one close call.
What about you, Joe? Are you working on anything at the moment? Any book deals or movie appearances? You
starring on Broadway anytime soon that we should?
No, not Broadway, the West End.
Oh, okay. that's a little second that.
EastEnders.
I've actually I've started a kid's bed build, the Power Ranger bed that I actually mentioned. I don't know how many podcasts ago now, but I've actually started that project, so that's underway. But I've also started designing a whole bunch of bedroom furniture projects for myself. I'm going to try and incorporate some steel and walnut and plywood, and I've got some what I think will be decent ideas, so I'll be really looking forward to starting with those, but mainly just all designing, I suppose.
Cool. Well, I basically totally closed the workshop down, but before I closed it down, I agreed to a collaboration with another creator and a whole load of creators for a project. And I've suddenly realised, because I've got a bit more information about it the other day, the date we're looking to release the videos is the 21st of January. And I've absolutely no clue how I'm going to make the thing that I've said I'm going to make. I have a deadline. It's for a really, really good cause. Loads of other people are involved, and I have absolutely no clue how I'm going to make this whatsoever. Zero. And it kind of scares me, because it's not the sort of thing I can, if it's just this idea I've got for my channel, and I can just not put it out. But now I've actually committed to the wider audience. So
you can find me at JP Woodwork on YouTube and JP_Woodwork at Twitter and Instagram.
Joe?
I'm at Average Joe's Joinery on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Average Joe's Photography on Instagram.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. You can find me on Facebook on Make the First Cut, and on YouTube under my name, Chris Cute.
And a very happy new year. You can find me on YouTube and Facebook under The Woodworking Junkie.
I've been Rick Morley. You can find me at brainfizz.uk and under my name on YouTube. Happy New Year to one and all, and we'll be back at the same time next week.
Happy New Year, everybody. See you later.
See you next week. Happy New Year.
Bonjour.
Have a week. Oh, God, I'm hungover. I can't even believe I made it through the show.